Hello, everyone. Welcome to MedTech Insights. This is Dr. Jennifer Joe with my fabulous co-host, Dr. Ami Bhatt with MedTech Insights. When Dr. Bhatt isn't hosting the show, she's running the Mass General Hospital telecardiology program, seeing congenital heart disease patients, and teaching at the Harvard Medical School. When I'm not hosting the show, I'm seeing patients in the emergency room, urgent care, and hospitalist setting. We both support a number of traditional medtech and up-and-coming digital health startups. We both believe that healthcare can be better, both for the clinicians and for the patients. You can find both of us giving local, national, and international talks regularly, and you should look for our Springer textbook, which is the first ever textbook on digital health, to be published very soon. MedTech Insights is a live weekly interactive talk show led by me and Ami, where we interview two guest leaders in digital health every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. It's a little confusing on how it works. You can watch us live every Tuesday, 12 noon Eastern Time through the MedTech Insights Facebook page, either on Ami or my personal Facebook page, the Vanguard.Health YouTube page, or through my personal LinkedIn page. When you tune in live and write comments in any of these places, we try to feature you on the show. So please write some comments, tell us who you are, tell us where you're watching from, and tell us a little bit about yourself. We love comments, and our guests love the questions. All shows are recorded and available after the fact at our website, vanguard.health/medtech insights. Be sure to join to keep up with the show by joining us on our mailing list, and look for us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I know that was a lot.
that was fantastic. What Jen's trying to say is you can reach us in almost any way that you can find us out there on social media. But that was fabulous. This has been such an exciting ride for us, and really amazing how much changes each week. You know, we thought first about, are we going to be here every Tuesday at noon? Are we going to have new things to talk about? And it turns out that the field of digital health, telehealth, telemedicine, the venture capital going into it, the AI advances, it goes fast. And so we're really excited to be able to bring you new information each week and new people who are experts in the field. So for this week,
I think we're about to launch into the guest this week, but I do just want to take a pause. And Ami was on a fabulous panel discussion just yesterday. I learned about it because I saw it on social media. At the Invest conference. Very impressive, Ami. But I know
it was incredibly fun. So Med City News does this Invest conference, and it's a great opportunity to think about kind of our entrepreneurial spirit in digital health. And we had a great session talking about telemedicine, the delivery of care, especially to socially underserved areas. And it was just fantastic to be able to talk to City Block. We had there with us. We also had Moving Analytics there, who Jen's worked with Harsh before. And there's so much good work that's kind of being done in that field. So if you get a chance, that's also recorded, Med City News Invest Conference. And it was really quite fantastic. Lots of news about GameStop CEO, people taking equity and running. We have lots of things that we can talk about. However, one thing we wanted to mention is that we had a new member join our team. So Jacqueline Pagliaro is a master in public health, and she has a long history of being involved in digital health trials back before digital health became cool. And so she has joined our team. Interestingly, her day job is she's the project manager for the infectious disease clinical research unit at the Mass General Hospital. And that was actually started by Rochelle Walensky in 2020 when she saw that there was a need for us to be able to move quickly on all the COVID research. Fun fact, it turns out that she actually has Rochelle Walensky's office now, which she gave to her when Rochelle left for the CDC. So that's always fun.
Feel when she's sitting there and it's like,
I think the first day she sat there, it was a surreal feeling, but it's great to still have a connection to Dr. Walensky in that way for all of us. So it's good, in addition to watching the amazing work that she's doing down there at the CDC. So Jackie has joined us, which will be great. And I think we will probably feature some videos of her as we're moving forward and looking at some new devices, which is really her area of interest as they come out and they are FDA approved. So that's going to be a great addition to the show. Other updates, Jen, books coming out soon with Telemedicine Springer. It is the first one in digital health and cardiology, mind you, not just all of digital health. And otherwise, I think I'll go ahead and start introducing our guests. Announcement for all four of us, both of our guests and Jennifer and I. Everything that we're talking about today is our own personal views and do not represent any of the organizations that we either work for or consult with. So with that in mind, today we thought we had some great conversations thinking about AI, thinking about how important that is in the future of digital health, but also then thinking about what does that mean for security? What does that mean for compliance? What do we do when we're doing cloud AI? And so we have two great guests today, David Harlow and Aditi Joshi. So we'll start by bringing out David.
Yay!
Welcome, David. So excited to have you. So David is the Chief Compliance and Privacy Officer for Insulet. But really, David has been in this field since its beginnings. And the concept of how we're going to make sure that we are doing things right has been kind of foremost in all of the work that David has done so far. You can find him on his own podcast as well. I think we put some of the links into the social media. But David, welcome. And maybe the first thing that some of our guests already started asking on social media leading up to today is, tell us a little bit about you and how you've kind of taken your course and ended up here in this Chief Compliance Officer job.
Sure, thank you. And it's a pleasure to be speaking with you today. I am a lawyer by training and experience. I also have a master's in public health. And I've taken sort of a tortured path from real estate lawyer to healthcare lawyer. And then at a certain point thinking about, well, real estate law was related to healthcare laws since healthcare was provided indoors. And these days, since healthcare is more and more provided online, my practice sort of evolved online as well. And I spent a bunch of time as a lawyer and consultant to some digital health companies and projects, and have evolved over time to be in the medical device space. And the medical device space today is also trending in the direction of digital health, of data, of an incredible amount of integration with online tools and resources in order to make devices more usable and more integrated.
Fantastic. So when we start to think about integrating data, we start to think about the devices in the hands of the patient. There's a couple different ways that we can get devices into people's hands. So there's, when we as physicians are prescribing things, there's when the system has a kind of set of devices that they're coordinating with, or then there's when patients are going out there and really saying, hey, there's some direct-to-consumer marketing that's great, and people are trying to be more proactive. Are there differentials that we should think about in terms of compliance, security, safety in these different mechanisms of how we're interacting with digital health?
Sure. So in any context, when we're talking about health data, it is what we call sensitive data. And whether you're a direct-to-consumer product manufacturer and seller, something that's sort of a consumer/lifestyle device, maybe an activity tracker, we're still talking about personal data. We're still talking about the need for privacy by design, security by design. But when we cross over into healthcare and the healthcare realm, there's a whole other layer of regulation, whether it starts with HIPAA or starts with other three-letter federal agencies that we need to be careful about. And the issue there is that sometimes, and this is the weird part, sometimes those consumer devices are provided to the end user by a healthcare organization, in which case it sort of crosses over from being a consumer device regulated by consumer privacy law to being a healthcare device regulated by healthcare privacy law. And that's kind of a weird one, I recognize, and that's sort of the tangled web we weave, and sort of we've gotten to this strange place, and shouldn't everything be protected in the same way? And I would say, yes, it should be. We should have the same expectations, as an end user, we should have the same expectations of privacy, no matter how I get the device that measures my particular, bodily functions or readings, whether it's a heart rate or something else. We should be entitled to the same sort of protections.
So let me ask a question on behalf of the clinicians who are out there and watching right now and thinking, wait, did you just say if I prescribe something, like, please go ahead and use this Apple Watch, use this Garmin, use this, right? I'm a cardiologist, we're prescribing these kind of things. Who's responsible? Am I then responsible for the data that's coming in, for the storage of that data in a private and secure way? Is it enough if it's just scanned into our electronic medical record media? What do I need to think about as a clinician, as an institution, as a practice, when I'm saying, hey, go ahead and take what's ordinarily consumer data, but I am asking you to specifically give it to me?
Right. So it sort of depends how it ends up there, right? So if I'm a clinician who's prescribing what's otherwise a consumer device, and I say to my patient, I want you to wear this device, I want to use this, I want you to use this device, I want you to use this app, and this is going to connect into your electronic health record, and I'm going to get a stream of your data. First of all, take a breath, doctor, and think, do you really want all of that data? What are you going to do with it? And are you going to open yourself up to liability if you don't look at it? But so the next step is, are there a series of intelligent alerts that I can configure around that data stream? And then sure, then that's going to be useful. That's going to be actionable information. It changes from being data to being actionable information that you can actually use. In that case, I think you do want it integrated into your EHR, because then it's integrated into your workflow. The alerts can go to you, to someone else on your clinical team, and can be communicated intelligently to the patient, or it can be the basis of an intelligent conversation with the patient who's getting similar alerts on their end. And in that case, it's sort of integrated into the delivery of healthcare. And why shouldn't it be treated as health data in that case?
So, Jen, let me ask you a question. So, Dr. Joe, you have been, in the medtech industry for a long time, and there were digital health companies out there listening to this and thinking, what do I need to do? Because getting provider adoption is one of the hardest parts that we all face when we have a young company who's trying to get in the door. And this can sometimes be one of the barriers, right? Like, what am I going to do with all this data? Your device, your platform is great, but what am I going to do in the receiving end? So your advice or thoughts, Jen, in terms of companies who are out there who are providing these kind of resources, what level do they need to get to, because you're also a clinician, in terms of being able to provide alerts, being able to use AI to say what's out of range, what needs to be alerted, or a service? Do they need to have an affiliated nursing service screening for you before it gets to you? What do you tell people when they come to you?
Yeah, so these are really great questions. I'm in the emergency room, so alert fatigue is a real thing. It's a real, okay. We can even make it a hashtag. Even David's nodding. So the most difficult thing, I think you see it in cardiology as well. There's just a massive data stream. So being able to consolidate the information, knowing what's meaningful and what's not, and then appropriately alerting the right person at the right time. It's one of the most difficult things I think that startups can accomplish. David and I have known each other for a long time, really respect the work that David does. One of the things that I often see, and Ami, I know that you're building the clinic of the future. I learned this by accident. Ami works on so many things. She's building this fancy, smancy clinic of the future where you want to have wearables, connected health, apps, sensors, dashboards. You want everything. The piece that I worry about when I am consulting with startups is when you're buying, right? So you're building this clinic of the future, and you're doing it for a massive heart health system. There's a lot of interoperability, integration, but security and privacy issues that are massive. What are you seeing, and David, in your experience as well, startups, especially if they've never been in healthcare, just don't understand how important that is. So maybe Ami, you could speak to it, and then David, you can give us the history.
Yeah. I'm gonna give a quick answer because I can't wait to hear what David says. So I think there are companies who are out there who have done this before, and once you've done it the first time, you realize both how hard it is, but how important it is. And I think this is the importance of having clinicians involved from the ground up. And so, some of our friends who do kind of early round seed funding, part of their job is to bring a clinician in early so that people who don't know about HIPAA, who don't know about, what do we need to do in terms of privacy for these patients are learning it early. Initial companies sometimes run into trouble. Those who've done it a few times really do seem to understand that the challenges of getting through that security. At the institution level, and this happens throughout the world, we have a lot of doors. There are back doors, side doors, like there are all sorts of ways for innovation to get in, and we love that. But at the same time, our big problem is, how do you centralize getting innovation in without really holding innovation down and not letting it in? And that is a push and pull we face every day. We want everybody to come to us, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're doing it the right way. And so I think that's a constant push and pull you'll hear from a lot of people. But David, I'd love your thoughts on this.
Well, it's just a big concern. Like clinicians get very excited. We want to bring it in. We know that there's a lot of efficiency that can be had. But if we bring in something that's not secure, that's not private, we have a breach, it'll shut down the entire project for months, maybe years. But David, you've been working on this, looking at the industry, looking at the field, and also seeing established companies, young companies. What have you seen and what's happening now?
Sure. As you're talking about this, I'm thinking going back 10 or more years and thinking that the sort of the prototypical digital health company is founded by somebody who experienced a problem that his or her grandma had and was a techie and built an app to solve that problem, not really thinking about the intricacies of the healthcare system. And I recognize I'm oversimplifying in general.
I feel like
that's very true. Right?
And I think the field has grown up a ton over the past 10 or so years. And as part of that, there's a greater recognition of the need for compliance with HIPAA, the need for compliance with sort of data standards within healthcare, and the goal of, the goal that we're all working towards of interoperable data is very important. So we need to have data standards. The goal of being able to rely on data and rely on tools, which means that we need to have a greater understanding and buy-in to shared standards of privacy and security, are recognized. And we're at a point in time where significant enterprises in healthcare are now in the mode of trying to bring innovation in-house. This is a perpetual problem for any
significant enterprises. You're just alluding to our next guest.
Yeah, there you go.
That's perfect. You can't say data interoperability and not introduce her now. So I think we have to. This is a perfect time actually. Let's bring her in. So Aditi Joshi, she works at Google Cloud on the security and privacy engineering team. That is not all she does. She's done so much more. But let's bring Aditi on.
Hi there. I love the virtual applause. That is awesome. You two are just amazing. I don't know how you find the time to do all the things that you do. You're just like super women.
So thank you for saying that. I will tell you that for us, this is one of the highlights of my week. I love doing this, and partly, they talk about COVID and what happened to the extroverted people during COVID. This is what happened. They started a talk show because they were like, why? I want to meet new people. I want to see what's going on in the world. I don't want to just read about it. I want to talk to people.
I never heard that. What happened to the extroverted people? That's a thing.
Yeah. I decided it's a thing.
Who wants to talk show?
Aditi, thank you for being with us. This is great. So will you, just to update our audience a little bit, give us just a little bit of history as to how you got to where you are now, working at Google Cloud, doing security and privacy in the engineering team. And then we will hop right back into healthcare data interoperability, because I know you are, itching to talk more about it.
So thank you so much for having me. It's just like, it's a real treat to be here. So my name is Aditi and I work in Google Cloud. I'm embedded in the security and privacy engineering team. I get to work with amazing, amazing software engineers every day. So I'm just blessed to do what I get to do, and I'm fortunate to do what I do. But the views that I expressed today are solely my own. So thank you, Ami, for that caveat in the very beginning. I came here in a very roundabout way, just really focusing on what I was passionate about. I went through the biodesign program at Stanford, which is really an interdisciplinary program that focuses with Stanford medicine, engineering, and the business schools, and kind of brings all of those schools, the thoughts together into like a framework that allows you to be able to really address patient pain points and really meet the patient where they are, and then to help to develop solutions in a very iterative manner so that they're addressing that patient pain point. That's one of the other things. And I've also worked at the Center for Emotional Intelligence and just doing research work at Yale under President Salovey's in his lab. So that was also a treat.
I love that. And you didn't even get to Air Force work and other things. There's so much that you've done. So I have to do one quick little comment about Clubhouse. I was on Clubhouse while walking the dog, I want to say, like 2 days ago.
I am just going to say this feels random, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's coming. It's coming. There's your point. And in it, there were young entrepreneurs who were kind of talking about getting more involved, and like, how do you find people to help you with your ideas? How do you find those engineers? If you're a lawyer and you want to be involved, how to do that? And so I just, for anybody out there who's listening, I wanted to say to them, Stanford Biodesign, or like the 2 weeks ago when we talked about J&J. These are places that are just primed for you to go and learn and meet people and figure out, who are my people and how you're going to build this. So I love that Stanford Biodesign is in your history. So that has led you now to Google Cloud, to thinking about this. Healthcare data interoperability. Let's hear your kind of 50,000 foot view, Aditi, because we would love to.
Well, I think traditionally data has just been siloed, right? It hasn't really been used to the benefit of patients. So you've got all these challenges that are associated with healthcare interoperability. And even though we've made all these great strides in recent years, it really needs to be, and now finally is really a top priority for providers and patients. And it's the lack of interoperability standards or poorly enforced standards that have really prevented a seamless and a reliable exchange of health data, right? So while you've got all these efforts to create like a national patient identifier, some of that's really stagnated. What you're looking for is a cloud provider, any cloud provider that offers secure and HIPAA compliant infrastructure, right? And you want to be able to provide the right foundation that affords you that powerful interoperability, because ultimately what you want to do is you want to take all of this information and derive insights from it. Right. And that's what's going to enable patients, a new patient experience. It's going to improve business operations for hospitals. It's going to help make the workforce and the healthcare industry be much more efficient. And it really starts opening up the potential to start deriving value from all of these entirely new sources, like unstructured data. And all of that really starts with data healthcare interoperability. So we want to be able to allow all healthcare providers to be able to easily, securely, and instantaneously really collaborate while they're caring for their patients.
So you're trying to say that when my new patient comes and then I need information about their surgery, I do adult congenital heart disease, right? So their congenital heart surgery, and then their mom takes it out of their binder and faxes it to me, that's not the way to practice healthcare anymore. Is that?
Okay, I'm going to.
I use a fax machine and a pager. I just want to point that out. Okay, so
I'm going to pop in here and say that I think patients and clinicians have always wanted interoperability. We beg for interoperability. We fight for interoperability. So we want it. I think that we don't understand, I think, what the industry needs from us in terms of the barriers that are there and how we can advocate better so that we can have interoperability and meaningful tech and meaningful data.
Yeah, I think every healthcare organization is struggling with the challenges that are associated with big data analytics in healthcare, right? So because aggregating data manually is an extremely time-consuming process.
I think Ami and Jackie do that together.
It also makes data more susceptible to errors, right? And how do you analyze and store medical images? Because that's expensive, both in terms of time and money. So really the key is, how do you learn how to retrieve, analyze, and leverage that patient data so that healthcare organizations can ultimately focus on improving patient health and decreasing medical costs, right? And that doctors can spend more time with their patients. That's the ultimate goal.
So let's go back a bit, because you touched on something I don't think everybody in the audience knows this. When you're talking about cloud-based AI, if you will, right, being able to get all the data interoperable in one space and then look at it. You had mentioned we're talking about clinical care, sure. So clinical links to algorithms. We have a lot of guideline-based medical therapy that we're trying to do, and so links to be able to do that. But you also mentioned efficiency. So mechanisms with scheduling that we're doing, where, how many phone calls go back and forth between the nurse and the administrative assistant and me trying to find the next available spot in my schedule, right? That's a lot of time that we're never getting back. Yeah. You also mentioned cost, which I think is important, right? What fits under, I got an email today from somebody, hey, I'm already over my deductible. Can I please get that test done now rather than in the next fiscal year, right? So there's cost to the patient, there's cost to the system. But then I would like to ask one more thing, which is, as we look at that kind of AI, we're helping the system. Ideally, we're maybe even helping with burnout with clinicians. We're helping with patient outcomes. Does all of that fall under the same kind of security and compliance issues? Are we going to be able to blanket take care of that? Or each time I want to use the AI in this new system that, let's say, we're going to have, I need to figure out a different way to legally get there?
Yeah, so there was this overview study that was done just about the regulatory burden that hospitals and health systems face. And there is a significant financial and time cost to compliance. And this particular report, I'm happy to link to it afterwards. It's regulatory compliance here is not just about security and privacy related issues, but it also covers areas like documentation and patient safety, right? So IT compliance costs are a major component. And if you look at some of the figures across the board, across the industry, healthcare organizations are spending upwards of over $39 billion a year on admin activities of compliance. And this includes approximately 59 full-time employees, of which 15 are about clinical staff. So in conclusion, like when you look at it, the cost of compliance results in time away from patients and potentially redundant efforts within an organization. So what you really want to do is you want to look at a cloud provider, whatever that is for you, to kind of help address some of this burden.
That's great. This is sounding like my magic pill right now. I mean, this is fantastically exciting. David, from your perspective, as we start thinking about cloud AI, right, moving a little bit from what we were just talking about, things that you think we might do wrong as doctors or hospital systems as we're engaging, or words of sage advice.
Like a dangerous territory that
we're just going to go right there. We're going to go right there. That's what David
into. I've never known a doctor or a hospital to do anything wrong.
End the show. We're done.
But just to go back a sec to what Aditi was saying, I think there's a significant cost and there's a significant resource that's devoted to all of the regulatory overhead. But in the scheme of things, it sounds like a big number, but unfortunately, in the scheme of things, in American healthcare systems, that's kind of a drop in the bucket. It is a big number, but in the scheme of things, it is kind of a drop in the bucket. And we do have a big system. We do have a lot to take care of. Could it be done more efficiently? Yes, of course. It would be much better if we could do everything more efficiently and effectively on many parameters. This is one of many. In terms of putting AI to work, there are a number of issues. From a pure legal perspective, you think about, well, what's the liability here? Who am I going to sue for malpractice? Okay, so I'm not going to sue the doctors or the hospitals because they're wonderful, right, folks? But somebody programmed this AI, which was sort of a black box solution for a clinician who made a decision based on the output. and something bad happened to a patient. What do we do with that? How do we manage that? I don't think, yes, we can apply existing law to that scenario, but the question is whether we've really thought about it enough to do that as we must in the best possible way.
So it's interesting.
We do need to rely on AI. Part of relying on AI means relying on some data sets, right? So is it a mass of undifferentiated data that just sort of gets put through the unsupervised learning algorithms to develop new tools? Or do we need tagged data? How is that tagged? It's another cost. It's another bit of overhead with an army of individuals, clinicians and technologists who are tagging data in order to feed it into the AI development process. So many steps, many opportunities here, but in some areas we are there, in others we're not there yet.
Yeah, it's interesting you say in some areas we were there, because we did have some radiologists on the show, right, Jen, several weeks ago, who really, I think if there's a field within medicine that has figured out how to use algorithms, right, which we are then turning into AI. So when we say artificial intelligence, we're really saying we're using machine learning, especially in radiology. They're oftentimes using supervised machine learning. Then they use a combination of supervised and unsupervised to get there to say, this is most likely a pneumonia on your chest x-ray, right? And then we have trials. And so they've been doing this long before others. Interestingly, in heart failure, we actually also have that, right? So we have a great study, a kind of Dr. AI study, that showed that if you took heart failure experts, you could in fact teach a system. Dr. AI could tell you who had heart failure better than a non-heart failure expert could, again and again, right? 96% accuracy versus 72% in the individual, roughly, it might be 74, in that study. And so we know that we can do it in smaller, pilot, controlled mechanisms. And I think one of the challenges when you are talking about this, David, that we are seeing is, how do you go from them smaller pilots where you have control? That's what we're talking about, is control over the data, control over your medical license and your future in terms of having control of that data. And how do you then grow it? So maybe Aditi and Jen, I'm going to ask you guys to both comment on this, because I know you've both talked and thought about it. How do you go from doing that small work to really growing it in a system? And then Ellen has a great comment too.
Well, okay, so I we were getting so deep, and I apologize for just breaking this up a little bit. And we were talking about radiologist and neurologist, radiologist, maybe the same. No, it's not the same emergency medicine doctor. I do want to thank the audience for joining us. Would love to hear more from you. I just want to call out, thank you, Alan G, for joining us, who's a neurologist and a neurohealth practitioner based in Wyoming. There's a Jackson Hole Technology Partnership at the Wyoming Health Innovation Living Laboratory and Innovation Precision Health. Thank you for letting us know about that. That sounds long and impressive, and I kind of wish I knew more about it. But thank you, Alan, for joining. Sorry, I'm just calling out because we're backed up on comments.
So run with the comments.
So thank you, Alan, for watching, and thank you for appreciating our guests and what they're saying. Also, we have Saif from London. Thank you, Saif, for joining us. Saif is working on various hybrid cloud and AI projects. Oh, yes, no.
Excellent. Saif, you should answer my questions. This is great.
So it's clearly what people are working on, and David's expressing concern, and Ami's giving us some data, and we have a cloud expert here too. So thank you, Saif, for joining us. Okay, sorry, Ami, back to your question.
Yeah, so I think, that maybe Aditi, you first. Small pilots, AI.
Yeah,
how do we go large?
So the goal is really to take petabytes of data, right, that you've got, and turn that into health breakthroughs, because you want to be able to provide better care and you want to provide more streamlined operations. So whatever cloud big data tools that you've got, they've got the power to quickly process the petabytes of healthcare data, and it can help turn massive amounts of genomic imaging, clinical, or insurance data into health breakthroughs so that you can offer that better care. I think you want to look for solutions like a BigQuery type solution that's going to allow users to quickly uncover meaningful insights without having to manage all of that infrastructure. And by granting access to the better flow of data, what allows you to do is just do new discoveries, right? With these solutions that will lead to insights that's going to help improve your patient outcomes.
And that's great, because that's the step between what we're concerned about with David saying, but you and acted on that, right? Yeah. Which is, there is clinical intuition, and there is clinical oversight, and there is, this seems right to me, or this doesn't seem right to me. And I think that's the part that as clinicians, we have to keep reminding ourselves when we talk about AI and big data and cloud sharing. I would love to hear more from the audience about their thoughts and questions as well, because I know we're nearing end of time, or we might be a little over on what's happening here. In the meantime, maybe I will ask David, if you had to tell the people who are listening to us right now, and we're looking at the future of privacy and security, how do you think it's going to affect big data and the future of digital health? What do you think? What do you think is going to happen as we move forward in the next 5 to 10 years, as you already talked about the previous 10?
So I think there is greater sensitivity to privacy among the general population, and there's sort of a backlash, if you will, although it's more in word than in deed. When people think about, this social media company or that company has sort of taken too much of a liberty with my personal data. People may say that, but they still just download another app and click and accept and just proceed on that basis. I think we need to do a better job collectively in terms of explaining privacy policies so that they are more understandable. And there are a variety of ways of doing that. And we're, as I was saying, we're sort of moving in the direction of trying to build things that adhere to more of the privacy by design principles, security by design principles. It's not an afterthought, right? It needs to be baked in from the beginning, both in terms of design of a product and also in the way that it's used, on all ends. And when we have trust in a product or in a service, then we can do great things together, right? That's how you get more data in from patients, from others. That's how you build better intelligence, better algorithms. I'll say, just sort of digressing here briefly, my company recently published clinical studies on sort of a proposed next generation product based on algorithms, based on data, et cetera, that leads to better control of A1C, more time in range, using the algorithm. So that holds great promise, very concrete promise for the future. As each of us has been saying, there are different particular areas where we're making great strides using AI, using algorithm development. And the important thing is to just keep the patient at the center and maintain appropriate controls and protections around privacy and security of data.
That's perfect. Keep the patient at the center, and privacy and security is not an afterthought. Right? I think that's essential for everybody who's listening.
All great points. And as we are wrapping up and getting ready to finish the show, David, where can they find that paper if they wanted to read that excellent paper about the future of privacy and security? And also, where can they hear your podcast? I think you have a podcast and also a blog.
Yes. So there is a podcast. The paper is linked to from my company's investor website. So it's investor.insulet.com. And my podcast, Harlow on Healthcare. Find it wherever podcasts are sold or not sold. I'm on the Healthcare Now radio network. You can find me online at HealthBlog, BLAWG. That's my handle on social media.
You're confusing the doctors, David. No. Doctors may actually. No, I don't know where podcasts are found.
They can find them on the healthcare radio there too. That's fantastic.
Healthcare Now Radio.
Healthcare Now Radio. We love it. Aditi, thoughts from you, and specifically for this audience that we have, what can we do to really help get to the future that you so beautifully lay out for us? What can we do?
Oh, I think the next decade is going to be amazing because the power in healthcare is going to shift from health systems to actual payers, providers, consumers, right? So you're now thinking about it from a digital first mindset. And now you're thinking about, well, how do you take traditional care delivery and completely disrupt it? And that's kind of what really the last year has done, and all the great work that you're doing with telemedicine. You're way ahead of your time. But I think the key is going to be, how do you address the structural and technological issues, like including access, usability, and interoperability of data, because those are the barriers that are keeping us from moving towards a system that's built on just data liquidity in general, right? And when you have all these integration points, you want to make sure that sharing of that data within and across systems is as easy and seamless as possible. And then on top of that, you want to be able to layer machine learning capabilities, because that's when you can derive insights from that petabytes of data that you've collected. So I think addressing the interoperability issues is going to be key by using things like the FHIR standards, Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources Standards. That's going to allow for different applications and different health systems to communicate with each other. And I think that's really where we're going. I mean, it's an incredible, phenomenal time to be in healthcare, just in general. And it's going to be, it's great for the patient, because the patient's going to be at the center and they're going to be able to get all the benefits from it. And I think that it'll help providers, doctors such as yourself, to provide better care and spend more time, hopefully, with your patients.
That is, I feel like I should wake up every morning. I should hear you say this to me before I go to work, especially the part about me being, I'm going to translate that into me being cool and hip, because that's what we're going to tell my teenager that you said. That's how we're going to translate that. Seamless data sharing, and then being able to layer on machine learning so clinicians and healthcare systems and patients can use then their own intellect, their own ability to interact, to really go back to that doctor-patient relationship, right? And not do all that other stuff that somehow has become what we all do as patients and as physicians. Thank you both so much. This is great. Jen, do you want to tell us a little bit about the Boston Scientific
Patient Challenge? You're me fiddling with the tech.
No, but why don't we do that? And then I want to tell everybody about Telemed Now. So we'll do those two things and we can close up.
As we're getting closed up, I just do want to underscore that it's really about us working together to drive forward innovation. So clinicians, patients, chief compliant officers like David, cloud providers like Aditi, working together, creating new innovation together. Really want to just call out, really appreciate it working with Google. So Google is sponsoring the Boston Scientific Connected Patient Challenge. So if you haven't seen it, it's Boston Scientific's annual engagement with the community and seeking new ideas from the community, from the ground, from the clinicians. It doesn't have to be totally fully baked, and really supporting that innovation and helping clinicians, entrepreneurs, everyone drive that forward. We're happy and delighted to have Google as a sponsor. And if you haven't checked back in a while, we also have a number of other challenge collaborators who are also working to supporting innovation. So please check it out at Connected Patient Challenge. And I also want to say a big thank you to Google for joining us. So Ami, over to you.
One last thing for those of you who are Twitter fans, our hashtag TelemedNow Twitter chat is Wednesdays from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. But this week, interesting probably to our audience, we're going to be talking about venture capital and digital health. So we'll be having experts really talking about what investing looks like, who the up and coming companies are, what you need to do to get yourself ready if you are a young company, how you're going to have privacy and security baked in, and a whole lot of chat about AI. So hashtag TelemedNow, Wednesdays 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern on Twitter. Please join us as well. And thank you again, David and Aditi. Never enough time with you, but just such a great discussion.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our audience. Have a happy Tuesday.
Thank you.